Hi, my name is Dena Register. I'm a Chopra certified primordial sound meditation teacher at the Mind Body Zone in Lake Nona, Florida. I'm also a music therapist and a huge fan of young children and working with young children. I'm happy to talk to you today about how we introduce mindfulness and meditation to young children, or really children of any age, but we can introduce it at a very young age. I have three main tips that I'd like for you to think about. The first one is to think about the space that you're working with when you introduce the idea of mindfulness or meditation and quieting what we call the monkey mind, the inner chatter that very often is not helpful for us. And so if we can teach children to do this at a young age, they can utilize this as they grow up. So when you think about the space, thinking about things like, can you close the door? Can you put a sign outside saying, shh, we're meditating, or thank you for being quiet? And creating as quiet and still of a space as possible. Within that space, if you're working with multiple children, you want to help them carve out their own little piece of space. Very often children are comfortable sitting on the floor, sitting with their legs crossed, but they can also sit in a chair. Wherever their body is going to be the most comfortable is the best kind of space to utilize. But having a defined space for each of them. So one of the popular things to utilize in an early childhood classroom would be something like a carpet square, but having meditation cushions, things like that, where the space is defined for them and they know that this is my space that I'm sitting in, and they can spread out enough that they're going to be uninterrupted by anything that might be going on with others in the environment. Once you have your space set, the second thing, and the way I think is a great way to start with children, is focusing on the breath. The breath is one of our greatest healers. We carry it around with us our whole life. Sometimes we forget to utilize it. We forget that it's there to help support us. And it's a great way, a natural way to start with children. So if we pay attention to our breath, you can ask them some questions like, what does your breath do if you've been running on the playground? If you run on the playground, your heart is pumping and your blood is pumping, and your breath very often is kind of shallow and moving quickly, right? So what we want to do in mindfulness and meditation is use our breath to help us settle down. So depending on the age of the children, you can talk about what our breath does, how it responds to different environments, if we're scared, if we're relaxed, and emphasizing that they have control over that. So we're going to just pay attention to our breath for a moment. Thinking about how the breath comes into the body, we can hold our breath for a moment, and then gently exhale, and helping children identify how that feels in the body. Ideally, we would love for them to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose, or maybe out through the mouth, and to take long, slow breaths. So we can spend some time doing that and helping children identify what that feels like in their body. So taking time for the breath work is a great way to start this mindfulness and meditation journey with children. My third tip is to be aware of our senses and the way we can utilize our senses to help us go inward. So as we're sitting with children, we might use, if we think about using the sense of sight, we might use a picture or some kind of visual. You'll see I have a visual behind me here that sometimes we use as a focal point for meditation. So this would start with the eyes open and looking at the picture. You can use that picture as a way to talk about imagery and the imagery we create in our mind. So can I see myself, if I'm looking at a picture of a meadow with flowers, can I see myself in that meadow? And what are ways that I might like to move and to be in space outside? So helping them focus inward and using a visual for that. We can certainly use smell. So sometimes we might use essential oils as the mindfulness of smelling something and just sitting with that scent and what it smells like. So you can start with something that's really common, like mint maybe, or lemon, and utilizing the olfactory sense. Another great sense to use, you'll see I have a couple of sound sources here behind me. I also have, this is a chime that I love to use when we're focusing on mindfulness and listening. This chime, you can hear the sound extends for a really long time. So one of my introductory exercises with children is to have them place their hand up next to their shoulder. When I play the chime, I'd like for you to move your hand very slowly and keep it moving until the sound stops. And you'll find that the sound goes for a really long time, so it helps them really focus on the sound. How long can they hear it? How far does their arm extend? So a sound source is another great way to utilize the senses and work on mindfulness. As we try these different exercises, we might add on to the end of that, closing the eyes, placing the hands in the lap or on the knees, and just sitting for starting with only 1 minute in silence and focusing on the breath. Depending on the age of children, some may find this more difficult, but I think you're able to kind of scaffold the experience for them so that you can work up to a longer amount of time. The other thing that you can utilize in terms of senses is a mantra. And a mantra is just a short phrase that can be repeated. You don't repeat it out loud, you just repeat it in your mind. And it's a great way to focus and quiet the mind in and enabling you to sit in meditation sometimes for a longer amount of time. So you can either provide the mantra for the child: I am grateful, I am kind, I am joyful, I am happy. Or you can also do an exercise where you have them write their own phrase, keeping it short, that they want to repeat to themselves. I am smart, I am a being of light. So practicing the repetition of that in the mind for the 1 minute of meditation, and then extending the time over time. I hope you find these tips helpful and are able to utilize some of these with the children in your life. Namaste.